My name is Ethan Carver, and I'm not sure why I'm telling you this. Maybe it's because I need someone, anyone, to hear it, to believe it. Or maybe it's because I can't carry this alone anymore. What happened in room 1408 of the Dolphin Hotel in New York City. It's not just a story. It's a wound, a scar that's still bleeding even now, years later. I'm not here to scare you, though I'm sure some of you will feel that familiar chill crawling up your spine. I'm here to confess, to lay it all bare, because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll lose what's left of me. It was November 2017, and I was 32, a freelance journalist with a knack for chasing stories no one else wanted to touch. Ghost stories, urban legends, the kind of stuff that makes people laugh nervously before changing the subject. I'd built a small following on my blog, The Unseen Truth, where I dig into the weird and the unexplained, always with a skeptical eye. I wasn't a believer, not really. I thought most hauntings were just the mind playing tricks, grief dressed up in shadows. But I knew a good story when I saw one, and room 1408 at the Dolphin Hotel was the kind of story that could make my career. The Dolphin Hotel, if you've never heard of it, is one of those old money establishments in Manhattan. All polished marble and chandeliers, the kind of place where you feel underdressed even in a suit. It's got history, decades of it, whispers of mob deals in the bar, celebrities overdosing in the penthouse suites, and, of course, room 1408. The room had a reputation, one that the hotel staff didn't like to talk about. Over the years, there'd been stories. Guests checking out in a panic, maids refusing to clean it, even a maintenance worker who quit after one shift. The official record showed 7 deaths in that room since the hotel opened in 1910. Suicides, heart attacks, one unexplained accident involving a broken mirror. But the unofficial stories? Those were what got me hooked. I'd heard about 1408 from a source, a former night manager named Clara who'd reached out after reading one of my blog posts. She didn't want to meet in person, said she couldn't set foot in the Dolphin again. But over the phone, her voice was low, like she was afraid someone was listening. That room, it's not right, she'd said. It's not the furniture or the walls. It's the air. It's heavy, like it's watching you. I saw things, Ethan. Things I can't explain. And I'm not the only one. She told me about guests who'd wake up screaming, claiming they'd seen figures in the dark. About a businessman who'd checked in for one night and was found the next morning, curled up in the closet, muttering about the man in the mirror. She wouldn't give me details unless I promised to stay anonymous, but she gave me enough to know I had to see it for myself. So I booked a night in room 1408. One night, that's all I thought I'd need. I told myself I was there to debunk the myth, to prove it was just another overhyped ghost story. But deep down, I think I wanted to feel something, to know there was more to this world than what I could see and touch. I was cocky, sure, but I wasn't stupid. I brought my gear. A digital recorder, a GoPro for video, a notebook, and a bottle of bourbon to take the edge off. I checked in on a Tuesday when the hotel was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every creak in the floorboards. The front desk clerk, a guy named Marcus with tired eyes, handed me the key card without meeting my gaze. "You sure about 1408? He asked, his voice flat, like he'd said it too many times before. I smirked, told him I'd slept in worse places. He didn't laugh, just slid the key card across the counter and said, "Don't call the front desk if you hear anything. We don't go up there after midnight." The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than it should have. The Dolphin's elevators are old, all brass and mirrors, and the hum of the motor sounded like a low growl. When the doors opened, the hallway was dim, the carpet a deep red that swallowed the light. Room 1408 was at the far end, past a dozen other doors, all identical except for the numbers. But 1408 felt different. The air around it was colder, heavier, like stepping into a room where someone's been crying for hours. I swiped the keycard, and the lock clicked open with a sound that echoed in my chest. The room itself was unremarkable at first glance. Standard hotel fare. A queen bed with crisp white sheets, a desk, a minibar, a flat-screen TV bolted to the wall. The curtains were drawn, letting in just enough of the city's glow to cast long shadows across the floor. But there was something off. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through a wet cloth, and the smell faint, but there. Not mold or mildew, but something sharper, like burnt hair or old metal. I set up my GoPro on the desk, pointing it at the bed, and started my recorder. November 14th, 2017, 8:47 p.m. I said into the mic, "Ethan Carver, room 1408, Dolphin Hotel. Let's see what all the fuss is about." I unpacked my bag, poured a shot of bourbon, and sat on the bed, flipping through my notebook. I'd done my research. The first recorded death in 1408 was in 1923. A stockbroker who jumped from the window, leaving a note that just said, "It won't let me sleep." Then there was a woman in the 50s, found dead in the bathtub, her wrists untouched but the water red. The coroner called it a heart attack, but the maids swore they saw scratches on her arms that weren't there when the body was taken away. The most recent was in 2004, a tech exec who'd overdosed on pills. His wife claimed he'd been sober for years, but the police didn't care. 7 deaths, all different, but all tied to this room. And that was just the official count. I told myself I didn't believe in ghosts. I'd stayed in haunted asylums, abandoned churches, even a cemetery once, and never saw a thing. But sitting there, sipping bourbon, I couldn't shake the feeling that the room was watching me. Not like a person, but like the walls themselves had eyes. I laughed it off, chalked it up to nerves. I'd been up for 24 hours straight, chasing deadlines and red-eye flights. Just my mind playing tricks. Then the phone rang. It was one of those old rotary phones, the kind you don't see in hotels anymore, sitting on the nightstand like it belonged in a museum. The sound was sharp, jarring, cutting through the silence like a blade. I froze, my glass halfway to my lips. The Dolphin used keycards and flat screens. Why the hell was there a rotary phone in here? I set the glass down, my hand shaking just enough to notice, and picked up the receiver. "Hello." My voice sounded small, swallowed by the room. Static. Not the crackle of a bad connection, but something deeper, like a storm rumbling miles away. Then, a voice, low, guttural, barely human. "You shouldn't be here," it said. The words weren't clear, more like they were carved into the static, each syllable dragging like a nail on glass. I slammed the phone down, my heart pounding in my throat. I checked my recorder. It was still running, but when I played it back later, there was nothing, just silence where the voice should have been. I told myself it was a prank. Some kid in another room, messing with the old phone lines. I unplugged the damn thing, yanked the cord right out of the wall, and poured another shot. But the air in the room had changed. It wasn't just heavy anymore. It was oppressive, like the walls were closing in. I checked the GoPro. The battery was at 90%, but the screen flickered, like something was interfering with the signal. I stood up, paced the room, trying to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was above the desk, a big rectangular thing framed in dark wood. Nothing special, just a standard hotel mirror. But when I looked at it, my reflection, it wasn't right. It was me, sure. Same messy hair, same stubble, but the eyes were wrong. They were too dark, too still, like they were looking through me instead of at me. I blinked and the reflection blinked, but it felt delayed, like it was copying me a split second too late. I stepped closer, my breath fogging the glass, and that's when I saw it. Behind my reflection, in the corner of the room, there was a shadow. Not a trick of the light, not a coat on a chair. A shape, tall and thin, with no face, just a void where a face should be. I spun around, my heart hammering, but there was nothing there. Just the bed, the desk, the curtains swaying slightly in the draft. I checked the mirror again, and the shadow was gone. My reflection was normal now, just a tired guy staring back, looking like he'd seen a ghost. I laughed, but it came out wrong, more like a choke. "Get it together, Ethan," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. I was tired, that was all. Tired and spooked by Clara's stories. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the room was awake, that it knew I was here, and that it didn't want me to leave. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the mirror, waiting for that shadow to reappear. My reflection stared back, mocking me with its normalcy, but I could still feel it. The weight of the room pressing against my skin, like a hand resting on the back of my neck. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the light, a flicker of exhaustion. I'd been up too long, chasing stories that didn't exist. But the air in room 1408 didn't feel like air anymore. It felt like a presence, thick and deliberate, curling around me like smoke. I forced myself to move. I grabbed my notebook, flipped it open, and started scribbling what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. Mirror, shadow, tall, no face. The words looked childish on the page, like something a kid would write after a nightmare. I checked the GoPro again. It was still recording, but the screen flickered worse than before, the image stuttering like a bad live stream. I tapped it, cursed under my breath, but it didn't stop. The battery was down to 80% now, which didn't make sense. It should have lasted hours. I glanced at my phone. 9:15 p.m. I'd only been in the room for half an hour, but it felt like days. I needed to ground myself, to do something normal. I opened my laptop, connected to the hotel's spotty Wi-Fi, and started digging into the history of room 1408 again. I'd saved some articles and forum posts before checking in, but I wanted more. Something to explain what I just experienced. Most of what I found was the same old rumors. The suicides, the heart attacks, the accident with the broken mirror. But there was one thread on a paranormal forum, buried deep in the archives, that caught my eye. A user named LostIn1408 had posted in 2010, claiming they'd stayed in the room for 3 nights. They described the same heavy air, the same feeling of being watched. But they mentioned something else, something about the walls. "They move," the post read. "Not like shaking, but like they're breathing." I saw it at 3 a.m., and I swear the room was smaller than when I checked in. I laughed it off, but my eyes darted to the walls. They were just walls, beige, slightly faded, with a faint floral pattern that screamed early 2000s hotel decor. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but the longer I stared, the more I noticed the details. There was a crack near the ceiling, thin as a hair, running from the corner above the bed to the door. It didn't look like a structural flaw. It looked deliberate, like someone had carved it with a knife. I stood up, ran my finger along it, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. The crack was cold, unnaturally so, like touching the inside of a freezer. I stepped back, my pulse quickening. That's when I heard it. A low hum, barely audible, like a distant machine. It wasn't coming from the air vents or the street outside. It was coming from the walls. I pressed my ear against the plaster, holding my breath. The hum grew louder, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. I jerked away, my hands shaking, and told myself I was imagining it. But the sound didn't stop. It was faint, but it was there, pulsing through the room like it was alive. I needed a drink. I poured another shot of bourbon, downed it in one gulp, and paced the room, trying to talk myself down. "You're tired, Ethan," I muttered. "You're spooked. This is what you wanted, right? A story. Just get through the night." But the words felt hollow, like I was trying to convince someone else. I checked the door, still locked, deadbolt in place. The windows were sealed, the curtains still. Nothing was out of place, but everything felt wrong. Then the lights flickered. It wasn't a full blackout, just a quick dip, like the power was hiccuping. The room went dark for a split second, then back to normal. But in that moment, I saw something in the corner of my eye. A shape, the same tall, faceless shadow from the mirror, standing by the bed. I spun around, my heart in my throat, but there was nothing there. Just the bed, the pillows slightly askew, like someone had sat on them. I hadn't touched the bed since I'd arrived. I grabbed my recorder, my voice trembling as I spoke. 9:32 p.m. Lights flickered. Saw something. By the bed. Not sure what. I stopped, realizing how insane I sounded. I wasn't here to believe in ghosts. I was here to disprove them. But the room was getting to me, worming its way into my head. I needed to do something, anything, to take control. I decided to search the room. If there was a story here, there had to be evidence, something tangible, something I could write about. I started with the desk, pulling open the drawers. They were empty except for a Gideon Bible, its pages yellowed and dog-eared. I flipped through it, half expecting to find some cryptic note, but there was nothing, just a Bible. I moved to the nightstand, where the rotary phone sat, its cord still unplugged. I opened the drawer and found a small leather-bound notebook, no bigger than a passport. It wasn't a hotel guest book. It looked personal, the kind of thing someone might carry in their pocket. The cover was worn, the leather cracked, and there was no name or date on it. I opened it, and the first page made my stomach drop. In neat, slanted handwriting, someone had written, "Don't trust the mirror. It lies." I flipped to the next page. "The walls know your name. They'll use it." The handwriting grew shakier, more erratic. "It's not a room. It's a mouth." I slammed the notebook shut, my hands cold. Who the hell wrote this? A guest? A prankster? Or worse, someone like me, someone who thought they could handle 1408? I set the notebook down and checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing else out of the ordinary, but the hum in the walls was louder now, undeniable. I went back to the notebook, forcing myself to read more. The entries were disjointed, like fragments of a nightmare. One page described a man in the mirror who whispered things the writer couldn't understand. Another mentioned a smell, like burning, but not fire. It was the same smell I'd noticed when I walked in. My hands were shaking as I turned to the last page. It was blank except for one word, scrawled in red ink, "Run." I dropped the notebook like it was on fire. My GoPro was still flickering, the battery now at 60%. My phone was at 40%, even though I hadn't used it since checking in. Something was draining the energy in this room, not just the devices, but me. I felt heavy, like my limbs were made of lead. I wanted to leave, to grab my bag and bolt, but I couldn't. Not yet. I'd come here for a story, and I wasn't leaving without one. That's when the mirror changed. I hadn't looked at it since the shadow, but now I couldn't help it. My reflection was there, but it was wrong again. My face was pale, my eyes sunken, like I'd been sick for weeks. And behind me, the shadow was back, closer this time, standing just over my shoulder. Its head, or where its head should have been, was tilted, like it was studying me. I didn't turn around. I knew if I did, there'd be nothing there, and somehow that was worse. I kept my eyes on the mirror, on the shadow, and I swear it moved. Not much, just a slight shift, like it was stepping closer. My breath caught in my throat, and I backed away, stumbling over the desk chair. "Stop it," I said, my voice louder than I meant. "Whatever you are, just stop." The words felt useless, like shouting into a void. The hum in the walls grew louder, faster, like a heartbeat racing. The lights flickered again, longer this time, and when they came back on, the mirror was empty. No reflection, no shadow, just a blank sheet of glass, like it had swallowed everything. I grabbed my phone, my hands fumbling, and opened the camera app. I pointed it at the mirror, expecting to see the same blankness, but there I was, my reflection normal, staring back at me through the screen. I lowered the phone, looked at the mirror with my own eyes, and saw nothing, just a gray void. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I backed toward the door, my bag still on the bed, my GoPro still running. I didn't care about the story anymore. I just wanted out. But when I reached for the door, the handle wouldn't turn. The deadbolt was stuck, the keycard reader blinking red. I swiped my card again and again, but it didn't work. I pounded on the door, shouting for someone, anyone, but the hallway was silent, too silent. I pressed my ear to the door, hoping to hear footsteps, a maid, anything. Instead, I heard the hum again. Not from the walls this time, but from the other side of the door. It was out there, too. I was trapped. The door wouldn't budge. I pounded on it until my knuckles ached, the sound dull and muffled, like the room was swallowing it whole. My voice cracked as I shouted again, "Help! Somebody, please!" But the hallway beyond was silent, save for that damn hum, low, relentless, now pulsing from both sides of the door, inside and out. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence, wrapping around me, squeezing. I backed away, my breath ragged, my eyes darting to the mirror. It was still blank, a gray void where my reflection should have been. The room felt smaller now, the walls closer, like they were inching in when I wasn't looking. I stumbled back to the bed, my bag still there, my GoPro flickering on the desk. The battery was down to 40%, and my phone was at 20%, even though I hadn't touched it. I grabbed the notebook I'd found in the nightstand, the one with the cryptic warnings. Don't trust the mirror. It lies. My hands shook as I flipped through it again, searching for something, anything, that could explain what was happening. The pages were filled with more disjointed entries, each one more desperate than the last. "It knows your name," one read. "It knows what you're afraid of." Another, in that same shaky handwriting, "The mirror shows you what it wants you to see." I stopped at a page near the end, where the writing was so frantic it was barely legible. "It's not a room. It's alive. It feeds." I dropped the notebook, my heart hammering. Feeds? On what? Fear? Pain? or something worse? I didn't want to know, but I couldn't stop myself from picking it up again. There was one more entry, scrawled in a different hand, this one steadier but no less chilling. If you see him, it's too late. He's already inside you. I slammed the notebook shut and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a soft thud and fell open. The pages splayed like a broken bird. I needed to get out. Now, I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and tried the door again. The keycard reader still blinked red, mocking me. I kicked the door hard and felt a sharp pain shoot up my leg. The hum grew louder, faster, like the room was laughing at me. I turned to the window, my last hope. It was a long shot, 14 floors up, no fire escape, but I had to try. I yanked the curtains back, expecting to see the Manhattan skyline, the glow of streetlights, anything to remind me there was a world outside this room. But the window was wrong. It wasn't a window anymore. It was a mirror, the same dark-framed mirror from above the desk. But now it was here, where the window should have been. My reflection stared back, pale and hollow-eyed. But this time it wasn't alone. The shadow was there again, standing just behind me, its faceless head tilted like it was curious. I didn't turn around. I knew better by now. I backed away, my breath coming in short gasps, and tripped over the edge of the bed, landing hard on the floor. The mirror, the window, loomed over me, and my reflection smirked. Not smiled, smirked, like it knew something I didn't. "Stop it," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Please, just stop." But the room didn't stop. The hum was a roar now, vibrating in my chest, and the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat. When they came back on, the mirror was normal again, or as normal as it could be. My reflection was there. No shadow, no smirk. Just me, looking like I'd aged a decade in an hour. But the window was still a mirror, not glass. I crawled to my feet, my bag slipping off my shoulder, and pressed my hands against it, hoping to feel cold glass, something real. It was smooth, unyielding, and ice cold, like touching a frozen lake. I stumbled back to the desk, my mind racing. The GoPro was still running, though the screen was a mess of static now. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app again, and pointed it at the mirror. There I was, my reflection clear on the screen, but when I lowered the phone and looked with my eyes, the mirror was blank again. "What the hell are you?" I said, my voice breaking. I didn't expect an answer, but I got one. The mirror spoke. Not in words, not exactly. It was a sound, low and guttural, like the voice on the phone but worse. Deeper, older, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. It wasn't English, wasn't any language I knew, but it felt like it was saying my name. Ethan. The sound crawled into my head, burrowing like a worm. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely pick it up again. The screen was black now, dead, even though it had battery left minutes ago. I was losing it. I knew I was, but I couldn't stop myself from looking at the mirror again. My reflection was back, but it wasn't me anymore. It was me, but wrong. My eyes were too dark, my mouth too wide, my skin too pale, like a wax figure melting under heat. And behind it, the shadow was closer, its void face inches from my reflection's shoulder. It raised a hand, or what passed for a hand, a long, claw-like thing, and pressed it against the inside of the mirror like it was trying to push through. I screamed. I don't know how long or how loud, but my throat was raw when I stopped. The room was silent again, the hum gone, the lights steady. The mirror was just a mirror now, showing me my terrified face. No shadow, no claw, but I could still feel it, that presence watching me from somewhere I couldn't see. I sank to the floor, my back against the bed, and buried my face in my hands. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but I was trapped, and the room knew it. I don't know how long I sat there, minutes or hours. Time didn't feel real anymore, but at some point I forced myself to stand, to do something. I picked up the notebook again, my hands steadier now, fueled by desperation. I needed answers. I flipped to the page with the red ink "Run" and noticed something I'd missed before. A small, folded piece of paper tucked into the binding. I unfolded it, my fingers trembling. It was a photograph, old and faded, the kind you'd find in a thrift store album. It showed a man, maybe 40, standing in front of the Dolphin Hotel. He was smiling, but his eyes were wrong, empty, like he was already gone. On the back, in the same neat handwriting as the notebook's first entry, was a name, Henry Whitaker, 1923. I froze. 1923. The stockbroker who jumped from the window, the first recorded death in room 1408. I'd read about him in my research, but seeing his face, his name written like that, it hit me like a punch. I flipped through the notebook again, looking for more clues. Another entry, halfway through, mentioned Whitaker by name. Henry saw him first. He told me it was in the mirror, always the mirror. He said it whispered his secrets, the ones he never told anyone. He said it made him jump. I dropped the notebook again, my mind reeling. Whoever wrote this knew Henry Whitaker. They'd been in this room maybe decades ago, and they'd seen what I was seeing. I grabbed my laptop, praying it still had battery, and searched for Henry Whitaker. The Wi-Fi was gone now, but I'd saved some articles offline. One mentioned Whitaker's suicide note. It won't let me sleep. But there was something else, a detail I'd overlooked. A maid had found a journal in the room after his death, but it was never turned over to the police. The hotel claimed it was lost, but the maid swore it was full of crazy talk about mirrors and shadows. I looked at the notebook in my hands. Was this it? Whitaker's journal? Or someone else's? Someone who'd stayed here after him? I didn't know, but it was all I had. I read more, each entry worse than the last. One described the room changing shape, the walls bending inward at night. Another mentioned a smell, like blood, but sweeter. The final entry, just before the red ink "Run," was the worst. It's not one thing, it's many. They live in the mirror, in the walls, in the air. They're hungry, and they know you're here. I was about to close the notebook when the lights went out. Not a flicker this time, a full blackout. The room was pitch black, the kind of dark where you can't see your hand in front of your face. I fumbled for my phone, but it was dead. The GoPro was silent, its red light gone. The hum was back, louder than ever, and now it wasn't just a hum. It was voices, dozens of them, whispering, overlapping, saying my name. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. I scrambled to my feet, my bag falling to the floor, and backed against the wall, my hands groping for something to hold on to. Then the lights came back on, and I wasn't alone. The shadow was there, standing in the middle of the room, tall and thin, its faceless head turned toward me. It didn't move, didn't speak, but I felt it. Its hunger, its malice like a weight crushing my chest. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The mirror behind it was blank again, but the reflection showed something else now. Not me, not the shadow, but a room. A different room, smaller, with blood on the walls and a figure lying on the bed, motionless. I couldn't see their face, but I knew it was me. I don't know how I moved, but I did. I lunged for the door, slamming my shoulder against it, not caring about the pain. The handle still wouldn't turn, but I kept trying, my hands slipping with sweat. The shadow didn't move, but I could feel it watching, waiting. The voices grew louder, not just saying my name now, but whispering things I'd buried years ago. Secrets, regrets, things I'd never told anyone. "You failed her," they said. "You let her die." I didn't know who her was, but the words cut like glass. I turned back to the shadow, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" I shouted. It didn't answer, but it raised its claw-like hand, pointing at the mirror. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The reflection had changed again. Now it showed me, standing in the room, but my eyes were gone. Just black voids, leaking something dark and viscous. And behind me, the shadow was gone. But there were others, dozens of them, all faceless, crowding the reflection, their hands reaching out. I screamed again, and this time the door clicked. The deadbolt slid back. The keycard reader flashed green. I didn't think. I grabbed my bag and yanked the door open, stumbling into the hallway. The air was different out here, lighter, but the hum followed me, faint but unmistakable. I ran for the elevator, my shoes pounding on the red carpet, and jabbed the button until the doors opened. I didn't look back, couldn't. I knew if I did, I'd see it. The shadow, the faces, the room itself, reaching for me. The elevator doors closed, and I collapsed against the wall, my chest heaving. The hum was gone now, replaced by the familiar whine of the motor. I checked my watch, 2:17 a.m. I'd been in the room for less than 6 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. My bag was still clutched in my hands, but the notebook was gone. I didn't remember dropping it, but I wasn't going back for it. Not ever. When I reached the lobby, it was empty. No Marcus, no guests, just the dim glow of the chandeliers. I left my key card on the counter and walked out into the cold November night, the city lights blurring through my tears. I told myself it was over, that I'd escaped. But deep down, I knew better, because the hum was still there, faint, inside my head. And when I looked in the rearview mirror of my car, just for a second, I saw it, the shadow sitting in the back seat watching me. I thought I'd escaped. That's what I told myself as I drove away from the Dolphin Hotel, the Manhattan skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. The city was alive around me. Honking cabs, neon signs, people laughing on the sidewalks, but it felt like a lie, like I was still trapped in that room, and everything else was just a dream. The hum was still there, faint but constant, buzzing in the back of my skull like a mosquito I couldn't swat. And every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I braced myself, expecting to see it. The shadow, its faceless head tilted, watching me from the back seat. It was there, just for a second, that first glance after I'd stumbled out of the hotel. But when I looked again, it was gone. Just my bag, slumped on the seat, and the empty road behind me. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. The thought of being alone in my apartment, with its mirrors and shadows, made my skin crawl. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where the clerk doesn't ask questions and the walls are thin enough to hear your neighbor's TV. I paid in cash, locked the door, and covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed, my knees pulled to my chest, staring at the door, waiting for something to knock. It didn't, But the hum never stopped. It was softer now, like a whisper, but it was there, and it knew my name. By morning, I was a wreck. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands trembling from too much coffee and too little sleep. I needed answers, something to make sense of what I'd seen in room 1408. I drove to a diner, ordered a black coffee, and opened my laptop. The GoPro footage was corrupted, hours of static, not a single frame of the room. My phone was dead, even after charging it all night. But I still had my notes, scribbled in a panic before I'd fled. Mirror lies, walls breathe, it feeds. And that name, Henry Whitaker, the stockbroker who jumped in 1923. I started digging, searching every database I could access, chasing any lead on Whitaker or the Dolphin Hotel. Most of what I found was the same old story. Whitaker, 41, successful but stressed, leapt from the 14th floor window of room 1408, leaving a cryptic note. It won't let me sleep, but I found something else, buried in an obscure newspaper archive from 1924. A follow-up article, barely a paragraph, mentioned a maid who'd worked at the Dolphin. She'd been fired after Whitaker's death, accused of stealing a journal from the room. She claimed it wasn't theft. She'd taken it because it was evil, filled with ramblings about a man in the mirror who whispered secrets and drove Whitaker mad. The hotel denied it, said the journal was lost, but I knew better. I'd held it in my hands, read its warnings. It wasn't lost. It was still in 1408, waiting for the next fool to find it. I kept searching, piecing together fragments. The other deaths in 1408, the woman in the bathtub, the tech exec with the pills, had similar stories. Notes, journals, or letters, all mentioning mirrors, shadows, voices. None of it was official, just whispers in old forums, blog posts, and yellowed newspaper clippings. But there was a pattern. Every guest who'd stayed in 1408 and lived to talk about it described the same thing. A feeling of being watched, a mirror that lied, a room that wasn't just a room. And then there was Clara, the night manager who'd warned me. I tried calling her, but her number was disconnected. I found her LinkedIn profile, but it hadn't been updated in years. It was like she'd vanished after talking to me. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake the hum. It was louder at night when I was alone, and it brought dreams. Vivid, suffocating dreams of room 1408. In them, I was back in the room, standing in front of the mirror, but it wasn't my reflection looking back. It was her, Sarah, my sister. She died when I was 17, a car accident I'd spent years trying to forget. In the dreams, her face was pale, her eyes black voids, just like the shadows. She'd reach out, her fingers brushing the inside of the mirror, and whisper, "You failed me, Ethan. You let me die." I'd wake up screaming, the hum ringing in my ears, my reflection in the motel mirror flickering for just a second too long. I hadn't thought about Sarah in years. She was 19 when it happened, driving home from college. I was in the passenger seat, half drunk, arguing with her about some stupid teenage thing. I don't remember the crash, just the aftermath. Waking up in the hospital, my arm in a cast, and Sarah gone. The police said it was her fault, said she'd swerved into oncoming traffic. I'd buried it, locked it away, told myself it was just a tragedy, not my fault. But the hum wouldn't let me forget. It dug up her face, her voice, and those words, "You failed me." I started avoiding mirrors. I covered them with sheets, turned them to the wall, anything to keep from seeing my reflection. But it didn't help. The hum was louder now, and sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I'd see it. The shadow standing in doorways, lurking in reflections on windows or polished surfaces. It wasn't just in my head. I'd walk into a coffee shop, catch a glimpse of it in the glass door, and feel my heart stop. I'd turn, and it was gone, but the hum would spike, like it was laughing. I knew I had to go back, to the Dolphin, to room 1408, not to stay, not to fight, but to understand, to end it. I'd left something in that room, not just the notebook, but a piece of myself. I could feel it like a hook in my chest, pulling me back. So, 3 weeks after I'd fled, I stood in front of the Dolphin Hotel again, the November wind cutting through my jacket. The lobby was the same. Polished marble, chandeliers, the faint smell of cigar smoke. Marcus was at the front desk, his tired eyes narrowing when he saw me. "You're back," he said, not a question. "You shouldn't be." "I need to see it," I said. 1408. "I need to know." He shook his head, his voice low. "Nobody stays in that room twice. Not if they're smart." "I'm not staying," I lied. "I just need to look." He didn't argue, just handed me a key card, his hand shaking slightly. "Don't call us if you get stuck. We don't go up there." I nodded, took the key, and headed for the elevator. The ride up was worse this time, the hum growing louder with every floor, like the room knew I was coming. The 14th floor hallway was just as I remembered. Dim, red carpet, the air heavy. But this time, the other doors were different. Some were boarded up, others had "Do Not Disturb" signs that looked like they'd been there for years. Room 1408 was at the end, its door slightly ajar, like it was waiting for me. I swiped the keycard anyway, and the lock clicked, the sound echoing in my chest. The room looked the same, but worse. The air was thicker, the smell of burnt hair stronger. The mirror above the desk was cracked now, a jagged line running through it like a scar. My GoPro was gone, my notebook still on the floor where I'd thrown it. I picked it up, my hand steady despite the fear clawing at my gut. The pages were different, new entries in my handwriting, but I hadn't written them. "You can't leave," one said. "It's in you now." Another, "Sarah sees you." I dropped the notebook, my breath hitching. The hum was deafening now, vibrating through the walls, the floor, my bones. The lights flickered, and the mirror spoke again. Not in words, but in images. I saw Sarah, her face twisted in pain, her hands pressed against the inside of the mirror. Behind her, the shadow loomed, its claw-like hand on her shoulder. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice echoing in my head. "You let me die." "No," I said, backing away. "It wasn't my fault. It was an accident." But the mirror didn't care. It showed me the crash. Our car, the headlights of the truck, Sarah's scream as she swerved, and me, drunk, yelling at her, distracting her. I'd blocked it out, convinced myself I wasn't to blame, but the room knew. It knew everything. The shadow stepped closer in the reflection, its void face inches from Sarah's, and I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It was all of them: Whitaker, the woman in the bathtub, the tech exec, every soul who died in this room. They were trapped, part of it, and now it wanted me. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Not locked, gone. Just a blank wall where it should have been. The room was smaller now, the walls visibly closer, the ceiling lower. The hum was a scream, the voices overlapping, chanting my name, Sarah's name, Whitaker's name. I grabbed the notebook, tore out the pages, and threw them at the mirror, screaming, "Leave me alone!" The mirror shattered, glass raining to the floor, but it didn't stop. The reflection was still there, in the shards, showing me Sarah, the shadow, and now me, my face, but not my face, with black voids for eyes. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, as the room closed in. But at some point, I felt it, a cold, sharp pain in my chest like a blade. I looked down, expecting blood, but there was nothing. Just the hum, louder than ever, and a voice. Not Sarah's, not the shadow's, but mine. "You're home," it said, and I realized it wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from inside me. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember the elevator, the lobby, or the street outside. But I woke up in my car, parked in an empty lot, the notebook on the passenger seat, open to a new page. In my handwriting, it said, "You never left." My phone was working again, but the date was wrong, November 14th, 2017, the night I checked into 1408. I checked the news, the weather, anything to prove it was a glitch, but everything said the same thing. It was like the past 3 weeks hadn't happened. I'm telling you this now because I don't know how much time I have left. The hum is always there, louder when I'm near mirrors, quieter when I'm not, but never gone. I see the shadow everywhere, in windows, in puddles, in the eyes of strangers. And Sarah, she's there too, in my dreams, in reflections, whispering, "You failed me." I tried to find the Dolphin Hotel again, to burn it down, to end it, but it's gone. The address is just an empty lot now, like it never existed. But I know it did. I know it's still out there, waiting for someone else to walk into room 1408. I don't look in mirrors anymore. I can't. Because when I do, it's not my face looking back. It's hers. It's them. And it's me, but not me, a version of me that belongs to the room. I don't know if I escaped or if I'm still there, trapped in some loop I can't see. But I know one thing. If you ever find yourself at the Dolphin Hotel, if you ever see a key card for room 1408, don't take it. Don't go in. Because once you do, it's not just a room. It's you.